Hi guys, it's Alan and welcome back to the Library of Alexandria. So today I continue my reviews of the Malazan Book of the Fallen series today with Book 3, Boom! Or Boom! Memories of Ice. You will see that it has no cover. That is because it fell off. I have another copy with a different cover of Memories of Ice. The first time I read it, it also has no cover because it fell off too. Apparently, these books just take me so long to get through that the covers just kind of fall off because my cover of Return of the Crimson Guard also fell off, but that book took me 130 years to finish, so I understand that one. So, Memories of Ice is our third book in the series. It follows the same plot right where we left off from the first book, Gardens of the Moon. In the second book, Dead House Gates, we followed Fiddler and Callum and Crocus and Apsalar. From Gardens of the Moon, we followed them into the Whirlwind Rebellion on the Seven Cities Desert continent. But now we've returned back to the continent of Genabacchus, where Dujek and his outlawed Malazan army and the rest of the bridge burners going to stop this growing threat of someone called the Panian Seer. And so this book takes place simultaneously as Dead House Gates, even though they're kind of on different ends of the world. Now, I say outlawed army because that happened at the end of the first book, Gardens of the Moon, and it is the worst kept secret in the military. I've talked plenty of times about how Lassine's plans just aren't very good. It's obvious to everyone in the army, even before they're told, that, oh, the outlawing of Dujek's army was just a secret ploy so that they could end up working with Kaladin Brood and his army, who have been historically the Malazan's enemies. So the whole outlawing is just so that they can link up with Anamander Rake and his Tisti Andy and Kaladin Brood. And everyone knows that. So the outlawing is pointless because everyone realizes, like, the Malazans know that it's fake. And I don't know, it's just a dumb plan. Erickson should have just had them team up. Avengers! Because the Panian threat is a larger threat to all of them. And then they can go back to fighting. Instead, this elaborate ruse, it just falls really, really flat. So, that is the main plot of Memories of Ice. It is Dujek and the Malazans, and Whiskey Jack and the Bridge Burners, and then Kaladin Brood and Anamander Rake, all marching south to the empire of to the Panian Domain, which is where the Panian Seer and his Panians kind of rule and have established this kind of despotic theocracy there. So Memories of Ice is actually one of the more tightly plotted Malazan books because there aren't a lot of scattered, spread out POVs. Every POV is kind of pointing toward the Panian conflict, really the entire time. There's no large, huge, multi-hundred-page build-up. Everything's pointing towards the Panians. In fact, the only people that aren't with the army right away are a group of people that are slightly south of the Panian Domain that are marching north to link up with the Malazans. But that's really it. So everything is kind of focusing on this one purpose. So the beginning of this review, I'll make this as spoiler-free as possible, just talking about my general feelings about the book and how it compares to the other books in the series that come before it. And then, once I'm done with that, then I will talk about the book in spoilers, and then finally, I'll have my review at the end, so there'll be a timestamp that you can just click and jump to the end. So, Memories of Ice is definitely the darkest and dreariest book so far, but I think it's really where Erickson kicks off the series. I think the first two feel more like prologues to the main plot. Memories of Ice is where we're finally introduced to what's been alluded to before in the threat of the crippled god that we knew almost nothing about going into this, and that is kind of going to be the main threat of the series lurking in the background. So in Memories of Ice, he brings back a bunch of old characters. We've got Whiskey Jack, we've got Ganos Paran, we've got all of the bridge burners except Fiddler and Callum. So Quick Ben is here. We had heard about Kaladin Brood in the first book. We've seen Anamander Rake and his hybrid Dritsto Erden / Sephiroth self, and we've seen the Tisti Andy, and they're just as dreary as they were in the first book. There's a lot at stake. We have the first real villain of the series in the Panian Seer, and the stakes just keep getting raised higher and higher and higher. The action sequences in Memories of Ice, probably forgive every fault that there is with it. This is some of the best action scenes or war scenes. There are 2 sieges that Erikson has done up to this point, and really up to the end of Toll the Hounds, where I am currently in the series. So part of it is a little slow as they get to the action, but when that stuff delivers, guys, you forget about everything that came before and you just bask in this. Erikson is at the top of his form in the actual military scenes we have in Memories of Ice. This is the highest rated Malazan book. For most people, Memories of Ice is their favorite, is the best in the entire series, and I can absolutely see where people would say that. But for me, there are just some really bad, poor military decisions that are made toward the end that just kind of remove me from it and keep it from being in the top echelon where I put books like Deadhouse Gates or Midnight Tides or The Bone Hunters. So I like Memories of Ice. There are just some things in it that they just rub me the wrong way. And despite the fact that this is a regular who's who of awesome characters in it, subjectively, I don't really like the characters in this arc of the story as much as I like the characters in the Seven Cities arc, or the third arc that's introduced in book 5. I tend to like those characters a little better, so these guys are my least favorite. Even though it has the bridge burners, they are just kind of overshadowed by the dreariness of the War Council, and that I think is a problem with Erikson's books in general. These characters that have lived a really long time, like Anomander Rake and Kaladin Brood, and any of the other, like, long-lived, been alive for hundreds of thousands of years, Icarium from Book 2, Mappo. Oh, they're just a drag, guys. They're always so inwardly focused, and they just don't do a lot of action. They just stand there and mope and wax about what the point of life is.
And no hope of things getting better.
And so at this War Council between the two armies headed down to fight the Panian Seer, there's just a lot of these titanic personalities clashing, and it's just a drag. They're a drag to listen to, a drag to watch. There's just a lot of brooding and dark looks, and there's a lot of internal monologuing about things that they've experienced over the hundreds of thousands of years they've been alive, but that we're not privy to. So it means a lot more to the characters in the book than it does to the reader. And this is a consistent problem with Erikson through his books. He doesn't give us enough information, especially when it concerns the long-lived races / characters. He doesn't give us enough to connect with their grief, with their pain. I think his only exception is the Talan Imas. I think the members of the Talan Imas that he really lets us get to know, like Tool, or the ones in the characters in Seven Cities or Midnight Tides, I think he does a really good job bringing in that grief and what it's like to live forever with the Talan Imas much better than he does with the Andy or Kaladin Brood or Icarium or Mappo or any of those characters. Though the guards traveling along the caravan with them are some of my favorite characters. Also, this is our introduction in the very, very beginning, in the prologue, to the High King Kalor, who on paper and in the prologue should read as one of the most awesome villains in this whole series, awesome characters in this whole series. Kalor is, I think, one of the most missed opportunities or the most disappointing characters that Erikson has. But here is where he comes in for the first time. In Memories of Ice, despite everyone kind of heading toward the same place, there's a lot of threads up in the air that deal with the Talan Imas and deal with characters' grief and what the purpose of life is, and does life ever become not worth living? Is it worth living if your quality of life is essentially zero? Most of Memories of Ice is very action-oriented and driving forward, especially the sieges. I think the Siege of Capistan that happens right in the middle of the book is one of the best written sieges that I've read in any military fantasy book, and my specialization is military fantasy. I love military fantasy. The Siege of Capistan is so compelling and gripping and terrifying because this is the first time really that we see the monstrous things, the really reprehensible, abhorrent things that Stephen Erikson eventually becomes a huge fan of in the Tenescowry. The Panion Seer's main army is this army of peasants, of 300,000 peasants that he purposely starves so that they have to eat the people of the cities they conquer. And he keeps them starving so that when they siege a new city, they will do anything to break through. And it's just a horde. If there's 300,000 people, I don't care how many you kill. Thousands will fill any gap that you create, and they are horrifying, guys. The Tenescowry, they will give you the heebie-jeebies, and they'll keep you up at night. The Tenescowry, like the Chain of Dogs from Dead House Gates, is something that I remembered a decade after I read this book the first time, and they're instrumental in the Siege of Capistan. He has some real anime/D&D moments in that though they strain credulity to the breaking point, are just so freaking awesome that you can give them kind of a buy on it. And I think that's where part of what I don't love about this book comes in. I think the climax, the most interesting part of the book, is the Siege of Capistan. And that's before they actually siege the Seer's home base. And while that siege too is really cool, I don't think it's nearly as gripping or compelling or anxiety-inducing as the one in the middle of the book. And so it's weird to me to have the most climactic part of the book in the middle as opposed to the end. And so the ending siege just doesn't really work as well for me, and I didn't love it as much as this stuff earlier on. But Memories of Ice really has a lot to recommend as well. It avoids a lot of the philosophizing that is much more common as the series goes on. It avoids really pointless plot threads that don't go anywhere. It doesn't introduce us to new points of view 800 pages in. It has some of the most feels-inducing moments that we've seen up to this point in the series. Guys, this is war. This book shows with absolute clarity the tragedy and horrors of war, from the Tenescowry eating everybody to just the vast amounts of death. There is just a lot of people dying in this book, and it is just hard to deal with. Erikson does not pull any punches here. He is not afraid of grabbing you by your heartstrings and pulling for all it's worth. There's one moment that I know everyone who has read this book agrees with that will have you breaking down in tears. You will weep at one section of the book. Almost guaranteed. It's just so powerful when he breaks away from trying too hard and allows these really authentic moments of compassion and friendship and found family and grief to kind of grab hold of the reader and get his narrative tricks out of the way and just let it play out. And man, there's some good stuff in this book. The Sappers are back, of course, and the Sappers are my favorites of the bridge burners. I love Moranth munitions just in general. It does kind of push belief a little bit that the Sappers are constantly tossed about and the munitions in their bag don't blow everyone around them up. This happened a lot in Dead House Gates, where Fiddler is thrown about constantly, but his cussers never explode. I mean, whatever, I don't care. They're cool. I'll forgive a lot if it's really awesome, but you gotta make sure it's really awesome. But the draggiest parts of this book are everything that deals with Silver Fox, which is the Rivi child that has Tattersail's soul within her as this kind of living bonecaster / spokesman for the Talanimas. Her and her mother, the Mib, it drags, guys. it's just a lot of self-pitying and woe is me, and it's just a lot of internal stuff. I don't know why Erikson doesn't get that all of this internal thinking, all of this introspection is not as interesting as he wants it to be. I understand that there needs to be some introspection for like character building, and that's fine, but it needs to be interesting, and I did not find that storyline all that interesting. It was necessary. Like I said, all the plots in Memories of Ice are necessary, but this one was probably my least favorite. So now I'm going to talk in spoilers because there are really some awesome and troubling things about this book that I cannot talk about without being more specific. So if you have not read the book, you should click the timestamp and jump to the end where I actually give my rating, and then come back once you've read the book.
Oh, hello. Didn't see you there. Did the butler let you in? It appears you've caught me reading Memories of Ice by Stephen Erikson. Here's the third book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. Well, so what are you here for? Are you here to discuss the gripping siege of Kapistan? No? What about the Kell hunters of the Kachin Jamal? No? Oh, what about the final siege of Black Coral? Oh, you are? Well, it appears you want to discuss spoilers. Well, you've come to the right place. Have a seat next to me and I'll have Reginald brew you a cup of tea. Because it's time for a
Spoiler Book Chat! Memories of Ice.
So Memories of Ice also introduces some of the coolest ideas that Erikson has had in world building and in building different races and stuff in the Segula and the Kachin Chamal, which are both really cool ideas. The Segula are this like race of, they're this tribe of people that live on an island, and they're completely warrior casted, and everyone who is a member of the Segula warrior caste has a ranking, and in order to increase your ranking, you have to beat people above you. And that's pretty standard, but they all wear masks. You can never see their face, and if you look at them too long, you've challenged them, and you don't want to do that because the higher it gets, the tougher they are to beat, and their rank is determined by the amount of marks they have on their mask. In Memories of Ice, one of the characters is the third among the Segula, and that's really awesome to see this quiet monastic-like warrior that just like anime kills everything when he's activated. And so the Segula is, up to this point, my favorite new cultural thing that he's introduced. And the Kachin Chamal introduced in this book are really everything that I could have dreamed about when I was a tiny child. They're freaking dinosaurs, guys. They're like T-Rexes, and the Kell hunters, the warrior band of these guys, they have swords on their hands. They don't have swords in their hands, they have swords on their hands. Their hands are swords. It is T-Rex / raptors with sword hands. And this race of raptor / T-Rex / dinosaurs, of which the warriors have sword hands, are also this vast technological race that built the Sky Keeps, that built all this like robotic, automated machinery stuff that we see. And how? You're dinosaurs. They don't have opposable thumb. I don't know how they manipulated anything. But the Kachin Chamal, I do not ask a bunch of questions about because they are my favorite. A race of hyper-intelligent scientific dinosaurs, of which the warrior caste has sword hands. Guys, that's just freaking cool. I love the Kachin Chamal. And Erikson also he introduces the military company of the Grey Swords, which are one of my favorites in all of the Malazan books. I just like this company and what they stand for. I like the members of this company. So back to the Siege of Kapistan. The raw brutality and just overwhelming odds that the Grey Swords are up against in the Siege of Kapistan is one of my favorites in the book by far. But I have to talk about, we cannot talk about this book without talking about Erikson's D&D / JRPG / anime influences, because Gruntle, while one of my favorite characters, I love the Caravan Guard who becomes the mortal sword of Treach / Trake. I love that he becomes a living tiger, and it is heartbreaking that it takes such a horrible crime against his friend Stani Manakis in order for him to get into the actual defense of Kapustan. But when him and his militia, who are all tiger-fied also, grab the child standard, the pants of the dead kid, and take over the tenement building and kill so many Tenescauri. They kill so many that they keep having to move up levels because the levels that they're on are so filled with bodies that no one can fit. So they keep having to move up till they're at the top. They're on the roof because there's so many bodies that literally, as they're expanding, because bodies expand when they're dying, the walls of the tenement building are about to explode because of the expanding corpses, and the blood is leaking out between the seams of the building.
Ew.
That's ridiculous. Like, I know in anime or in your head that looks really awesome, and it is. It's so awesome. Gruntle and his militia just ripping through them is awesome. But are you kidding me? That's not possible. It's not possible for you to kill that many people that it's just shoved. Like, no, there's nowhere for people to get through. And it's not gonna make a building explode. It's ridiculous. But one of the more memorable and awesome things about that, staying with the Tenescauri, this is the first, like, really nasty thing that Erikson has hung his hat on, and he likes to introduce more with every passing book. Add something super gross and just disgusting, and that's the children of the dead seed, which are these kids that are born because these crazy women camp followers following the Panian's army, when people die, they jump on the bodies of the dead men and mate with them.
Ew.
While they're dead.
Ew.
And the children they produce are called children of the dead seed. That's just gross. It's disgusting. I mean, y'all may think it's cool, but that's not my thing. It's not my scene. It's just nasty. You take that for what you will. I really like Tool's decision to go after Tak the Younger. I love the relationship between the Talanamas Tool and Tak. I like that friendship. I like that Tool is gonna burn the earth down if it means he's gonna get to Tak the Younger. Tool was one of my favorites in Gardens on the Moon, so I'm happy that he gets to do a whole bunch, and I'm also happy that I like his relationship with Lady Envy and the Segula as well. But one thing that I hate, that I don't like at all, because there's a lot of things in this book I feel that Erikson did because he needed to fit the plot he had in his mind, and not because it makes any sense. And probably the action that makes the least sense is when Tak the Younger is traveling with Lady Envy and the Segula and Tool, and then Baljag and the dog. I don't remember what the dog's name is. He is about as safe as he can be. Lady Envy is, one of Draconis' daughters, and then you have the three Segula, which are amazing warriors, and then Tool, an amazing warrior. They're all headed toward the Panian Domain. They're headed to where the Malazans are, because that's what Tak wants to do. He wants to reunite with the Bridge Burners. It makes no sense why Tak breaks off from the group he's with and joins the Tenescauri army because they're going to get there first. He knows that they're cannibals. And then he's shocked that he's going to end up having to eat people. It makes no sense why he leaves the super-powered entourage he's got, which is headed the same way, that he leaves them for the Tenescauri, putting himself in drastic danger. And then obviously we see he gets attached to the Kachain Shamal matron and gets all shriveled, and then the spirit of Tog, the wolf god, gets in him, and all of that is very... a lot of stuff happens in Erikson books that don't really make any sense. Oh, I guess that's a thing. That's fine. But that decision for Tak to leave doesn't make any sense. It drives me crazy every time I read it. It's not a good decision. And this brings me to the terrible strategic decisions of the Malazans and their allies. Their army, after Brood and Rake figure out that the outlawing of the Malazans was a fake, I mean, yeah, it was obvious to everyone. And now that y'all have found out, it literally changes nothing. The Panian Seer is a bigger threat than the Malazans are anyway. What's your problem, guys? Because they argue, they decide to split their forces. Oh, it's too dangerous for all of us to travel together because we'll disagree and fight each other. Okay, that's fine, but they're saying they're going to meet up at Sepik, a city close to Coral, where the Seer is. But then Dujek and the Bridgeburners and the Malazans get there first, and instead of waiting for Kaladin Brood and the Tista-Andi and all of these really powerful, half of their freaking army, they just charge in anyway. They go in first anyway. And the Bridgeburners, first in, last out, I get it. But because of this decision, the Bridgeburners are nearly wiped out. Dujek's host is nearly wiped out because they didn't wait. And it doesn't make any sense why they didn't. They know how powerful the Seer is. And some people I've seen online where people are like, oh, well, Quick Ben needed the Seer a lot. Okay, so cool. Meet up with Brood and Rake and be like, hey, guys, I know what's actually going on. How about we don't kill the Seer and then I can use him for what I need to use him? None of that. Instead, it's just a complete waste. And Erikson needs that to happen because otherwise he can't kill everybody like he wanted to. Though I guess you could just make the Panian Seer that much more powerful. Make it like a Siege of Kapistan. So that makes no sense at all. That's just a bad strategic decision. You don't split up your force instead of attack. Like, you don't weaken your force and go half-cocked. They knew the Seer didn't have any people behind. They weren't leaving people to protect the rear. They just didn't attack with their full force, which is just boneheaded. And on that, Anomander Rake's plan doesn't make any sense. What? The Tista-Andi and Moonspawn, they hide in this bottomless river till the very end of the war and then finally come out? That's so pointless. The Andi and Moonspawn and Rake are so powerful. The fact that hiding didn't even do anything. It didn't do anything at all. All it did was kill his allies. Rake's decision to wait, and I get that they unveiled Corald Galain. I understand that. Unveil it at the beginning of the battle. Why did you need to wait till everyone's dead and then come out? The decisions that are made here seem to be made for plot reasons and not because these people who are supposed to be brilliant generals, please understand that Kaladin Brood and Anomander Rake have been alive for tens, if not hundreds of thousands of years and are supposed to be really experienced in this kind of stuff to make such dumb decisions. And on a more personal note, hey, surprise, surprise, Taishrin did nothing again. Taishrin doesn't even reveal it. The only thing Taishrin does is chase Kalor off after he jacks and murks Whiskey Jack. And that sucks, guys. That hit me boom, boom, right in the feels, guys. I hated that Whiskey Jack had to die. I do like that Erikson did a really good job foreshadowing that by establishing the injury he got in Gardens of the Moon and the fact that he wouldn't let Mallet heal it. I didn't see it coming, so that was really well done. I don't really understand. They never explain why Kalor hates Silver Fox and why he felt the need to try to kill her so that Whiskey Jack had to defend her and die. I'm on book 8. They still haven't told me. I don't think there's actually any reason other than the fact that Steven Erikson needed Kalor to kill Whiskey Jack. So that's awesome, and it was set up really well, but still. It also seems like a squandered plot to have the Warrens be poisoned because of the crippled god and what he's doing. That's really cool, but it's like Erikson can't not have them do magic. So the Warrens are really only sometimes poisoned. They're poisoned whenever it's okay that a wizard can't do magic. But if he needs magic for his plot, then someone has some protection, is able to do it somehow anyway, and by maybe, oh, I almost got sick, I almost died. I mean, if you're going to introduce something like that, you need to be able to accommodate it in your story. And that really just kind of gets worse as the series goes on, that the cripple god has poisoned the Warrens. I think it is cool what Quick Ben does with the Panian Seer at the end. I think the Panian Seer from I am an awesome villain that has just destroyed a ton of people into I'm just a scared little boy and now a good guy and I'm going to help stop Burn from being feverish is a little, I mean, it's a little trite. It just kind of comes out of nowhere. I wish the seer had stayed like an awesome villain, but I mean, that really is fine. I think Erikson does a good job having us deal with kind of the grief here with Gruntle and what happens to Stani and the child Standard, the death of Whiskey Jack, the death of all these bridge burners, the loss of Tak before his rebirth into Annister. But I'm not sure, other than the Siege of Capistan, that there is a more powerful moment in this book than dealing with our boy Itkovian, the shield anvil of the Grey Swords, and the Talan Imas. When Itkovian takes the Talan Imas's memories, because they're dead, they're undead, they've wandered the world for, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years, but they cannot die. Even when they have no bodies, their skulls just kind of sit there and look at stuff. But they remember what their lives were like, and that causes them this intense, overwhelming grief, so that, and you can really feel that. And that's why I said that the Talan Imas are just much more well developed, and you feel their age more than you do Rake or Brood. When Itkovian takes their grief and memories upon himself, killing himself in the process, you've seen Itkovian's grief and his struggle with all of the loss at Capistan when he lost most of the Grey Swords. He lost his Destriant, lost his mortal sword. I defy you not to have cried in that. Like, my eyes were tearing up because it's just so powerful that Itkovian could be so selfless and so self-sacrificing as to, can you imagine that? Think about how hard it is to share the grief of someone you love, just someone close to you, when they're in pain. Think about how much pain you experience also. And then just multiply that to the 100th power. And that's what Itkovian is doing. He's taking these people and taking their grief, but there's thousands of them, and it's hundreds of thousands of years of that he's just taking upon himself. No wonder it kills him. But that moment of Itkovian's sacrifice and that just great compassion is like a shining beacon in the middle of what is otherwise just dreary, heavy, encumbering book. And I don't think I'm alone in feeling like that. The only problem I have with Itkovian's actions here is I don't know why it couldn't have waited until after the Siege of Coral. I don't really understand why everyone was just kind of okay with, hey, Itkovian, we know what you're going to do is going to, it's going to make the Imas mortal, and they can choose not to serve us, and they can go off, and that's where they go. They go to Assail to help their other clans. I don't know why no one said, hey, no, we get it. We also feel bad for the Talan Imas, but they're an undead fighting force that can turn into dust and get inside walls, and they don't die. It would be really cool if we had those thousands of undead warriors to help us beat this so we didn't all die. No. We definitely want you to take their grief and their memories and let them be mortal again. That's great. We do want that. However, can we just wait a couple days? I don't really know why it couldn't wait. And I've never found a convincing reason on why, other than, again, if they had the Talan Imas, all those people wouldn't have died. So it just feels a little plotty for me. But other than that, that is the most powerful moment of the book. Second to maybe the Siege of Capistan. I don't really know which of those moments are my favorite, but both fantastic. And on a personal note, before I finish with my spoilers, the absolute dumbest thing in this book, beyond dumb, like not dumb decisions, just something stupid that Erikson wrote, the fact that Kruppe's even in this is ridiculous. Erikson is just like, hey, you know that really hilarious character I made in Gardens of the Moon? I'm going to put him in this one too. So he's traveling with the armies. The fact that he can bother Kaladin Brood, again, a warlord who's lived for thousands of years, that he can annoy him so much that Kaladin Brood takes his hammer that can destroy the world and smashes it. The fact that that even happens, and the fact that Kruppe survives, is beyond dumb. It is so nonsensical. It's so out of place. It doesn't fit with the tone or the themes or the heaviness of what's going on. It's just pointless. Oh my gosh. And I haven't finished the series. If Kruppe is some like amazing like Deus Ex Machina that ends up saving everything else, I will eat my hat and I will be so disappointed. I hate Kruppe. And that moment with Brood is really, really stupid. So as a review for this, I really like this book, but it's not as easy for me to read as, say, Dead House Gates or House of Chains or Midnight Tide. So I don't rate it quite as high as I would those. It's definitely an excellent plus. I would entertain an argument if you wanted to say superb minus. I don't think it's the best Malazan book. I know a lot of people disagree with me. I think the highs are really high and exceptional, but I just think there's too much that kind of holds it back. Just in tone and some of the things that happen that don't really make any sense. That kind of keeps it back from being in my very, very top Malazan book. So excellent plus, definitely. You should absolutely read it. If you didn't like Gardens of the Moon and you didn't love Dead House Gates, try Memories of Ice, and maybe that will seal the deal for you. If you don't like Memories of Ice as well, because those three are so different, Gardens of the Moon, Dead House Gates, and Memory of Ice are such different books. The ones that come after this are very similar to each other, but if you didn't like those first two, try Memories of Ice, and if you don't like Memories of Ice, give up on the series, because you're really not going to like what comes next. If you have any other thoughts, I would love to discuss this book with you in the comments. If it's your favorite, tell me why. Tell me why I am wrong that it is not the best of the Malazan books. But as always, guys, thanks for watching.